Blood on his hands wasn't unusual for Marcus Webb. What was unusual was that it wasn't his own. He stood over the massive grizzly bear, its dark eyes now empty. The beast's claws were still warm, still slick with crimson. But the two crow women behind him weren't running. They weren't screaming. They were watching him like they'd been expecting this exact moment. Marcus's shirt hung in shreds, 4 deep gashes across his ribs still bleeding freely. His improvised spear, just a broken wagon shaft with a jagged iron spike, lay twisted beside the dead predator. Any reasonable person would have fled. But Marcus Webb had done something that made no sense. He'd fought a grizzly bear with his bare hands and won. Before we continue, we need your support. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and turn on notifications. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. The older woman stepped forward, her dark eyes studying his face with unnerving intensity. She spoke in Crow to her younger companion, who nodded slowly. Then she looked at Marcus. "The chief has been waiting for you." Waiting for him? Marcus had never met any Crow chief. He'd never even spoken to a Crow person before today. But somehow these women acted like they knew exactly who he was. The younger woman picked up something from the ground near the bear's body. A small carved antler stained with blood. She held it up to the light, revealing strange markings. "This was beneath the bear," she said in perfect English. "Someone left it here. A marker." The older woman began pulling out strips of clean cloth. "I'm Nayeli. This is my sister, Kimimela. You saved our lives." She moved toward Marcus with practiced confidence. "Most men would have run. That's why our chief values men like you." "Your chief doesn't know me," Marcus said, confusion evident. The sisters exchanged a look. Kimimela pocketed the carved antler. "He knows about you, Marcus Webb." Word travels fast about the man trying to make something of that worthless land to the west. How did they know his name? Marcus had lived alone on his failing homestead for 2 years, barely keeping his few horses alive. "The drought hit everyone hard," Nayeli explained as she cleaned his wounds. "Your neighbors abandoned their claims, but you stayed. You kept working land everyone said was cursed." "Chief Mahpiya respects persistence," Kimimela added. "What would your chief want with a failed homesteader?" Marcus asked. Nayeli finished bandaging his chest. "Who says you failed?" Before Marcus could respond, Kimimela pointed toward the horizon. "Someone's coming." In the distance, riders approached in disciplined formation. As they drew closer, Marcus counted 7 Crow warriors. "That will be our brother," Nayeli said calmly. They were tracking the same bear. Marcus's stomach tightened. He'd just killed a grizzly on what might be Crow hunting grounds. "Will there be trouble?" he asked. Kimimela smiled for the first time. "That depends entirely on how you answer their questions." The lead rider dismounted with fluid grace. He stood nearly a head taller than Marcus, with broad shoulders and scars that spoke of countless battles. "Nayeli, Kimimela." His voice carried relief and authority. "We heard screams. This man saved us, Chaitin," Nayeli said. The bear had Kimimela cornered. Chaitin circled the dead grizzly, examining the wounds. 3 deep punctures showed where Marcus's spear had found its mark. "You killed this alone?" Chaitin asked. "Yes." "With what weapon?" Marcus gestured to the bent wagon shaft. "That and my hands when it broke." "Show me your hands." Marcus extended his arms. His knuckles were split and swollen, palms torn. forearms scratched where the bear's claws had raked across his skin. Chayton examined the wounds carefully. Grizzlies don't usually attack during daylight unless they're desperate. Kimimela pulled out the carved antler. We found this beneath her body. Someone was marking this area. Chayton's expression darkened. These markings, they're not Crow. Cattlemen from the south. They've been pushing closer to our borders for months. Marcus felt a chill. He knew the type. Ruthless land grabbers who saw indigenous territory as free for the taking. The bear wasn't hunting, Chayton continued. She was protecting her cubs. Someone drove her from her den, forced her into unfamiliar territory. You said the chief knows about me, Marcus said carefully. What exactly does he know? Chayton studied him. He knows you've refused 4 offers to sell your land to the same cattlemen who dropped this marker. He knows you've shared water from your well with Crow families during the drought, even when your own horses were dying. Marcus was stunned. He'd never thought anyone noticed. He also knows you're running out of time, Chayton continued. The cattlemen who want your land aren't the type to accept no. That's why we were really here, Nayeli said, watching for signs of trouble. Our chief sent us to keep watch while he decided what to do about you. Chayton mounted his horse. Chief Mahpiya has been watching you for months, trying to determine what kind of man you really are. Today, you gave him his answer. The group began to move, with Nayeli and Kimimela mounting horses that 2 riders had brought. Are you coming? Chayton asked. Where? To meet the chief. He's been waiting to speak with you. Marcus looked back at his small homestead, then at the dead grizzly, then at the carved antler that represented a threat he was only beginning to understand. What if I say no? Chayton's expression grew serious. Then you ride back alone, and whatever happens next happens without our protection. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you're subscribed. We bring you powerful tales like this every week. The Crow settlement lay nestled in a valley protected by limestone cliffs. Marcus had passed near this area countless times, but had never seen signs of habitation. The village was completely hidden from outside view. The settlement consisted of about 40 dwellings. Children played while women worked, and men tended horses. This wasn't a temporary camp. It was a thriving community. Chief Mahpiya is waiting by the council fire, Chayton said. As they approached, Marcus saw an older man seated on a simple wooden chair. Chief Mahpiya appeared to be in his 60s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. Welcome, Marcus Webb, the chief said in clear English. Please sit. Several tribal members had gathered to observe. My daughters tell me you fought a grizzly with your bare hands to save them, the chief began. I used a wagon shaft initially, Marcus clarified. My hands were a last resort. The chief nodded approvingly. Honesty. Good. Tell me, what do you know about the men who want your land? Only that they've made 4 offers. When I refused the last time, they said they wouldn't ask again. Your land sits on the most direct route between their southern holdings and the territory they want to claim here, Chief Mahpiya explained. Without it, they'd have to travel an extra 3 days around the canyon formations. The strategic importance became clear. They'll take it one way or another, the chief continued. Men like these don't accept obstacles. Then why haven't they done it already? Because taking land from a white homesteader requires justification. Taking land from Crow families requires no justification at all. The brutal honesty hit Marcus like a blow. You could sell, the chief suggested. Take their money and start over. I could, Marcus agreed. But I won't. Why not? Because it's not right. And because once men like that discover they can intimidate you, they never stop. Chief Mahpiya stood and walked to the fire. He picked up a burning stick and drew lines in the dirt. A rough map. "Their land," he said, marking areas. "Their intended expansion," he continued, drawing arrows. "And your land," he finished, marking a small square directly in the path. "What happens if I stay and fight?" Marcus asked. "They'll destroy you. One man against their resources has no chance." The crowd listened intently. But one man fighting alongside others? That changes everything. And Marcus realized that everything today had been leading to this moment. Chief Mahpiya laid out his proposal. An alliance. Marcus would continue working his homestead under Crow protection. In exchange, he would help defend the valley. "What kind of help?" Marcus asked. Chaitan stepped forward with a rifle. "These cattlemen will come with hired guns. We need fighters who understand both Crow tactics and white men's ways." "There's something else," the chief continued. "The cattlemen aren't just marking territory. They're building a settlement about 12 miles south. Armed compound, supply depot, housing for dozens of men." This wasn't just about land acquisition. It was about military-style occupation. "How long before they're ready to move?" Marcus asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. "If I agree, what exactly would be expected of me?" "First, you would move your horses here where they'd have better water and grazing. Second, you would help us prepare defenses. And third, you would stand with us when the fighting starts. Not as a hired gun, but as family." Family. The word carried more weight than any legal document. Before Marcus could respond, a young rider galloped into the valley. "Chief, armed men are approaching Marcus's homestead." At least 15 riders, heavily armed. The moment of decision had arrived sooner than expected. Marcus didn't hesitate. "I accept your alliance. But we need to move now." Within minutes, warriors emerged with rifles and ammunition. Horses were saddled with practiced speed. As they crested the final ridge, the scene below made Marcus's blood run cold. Smoke rose from his cabin. His corral was torn apart. 15 armed riders waited near the ruins. "They want you to see this," Chief Mahpiya observed. "This is their message." The chief studied the terrain. "They chose their position poorly." He spoke rapid Crow. Immediately, half his warriors split off to circle wide, while the rest prepared to advance. "We're not trying to kill them all," the chief explained. "We want them to deliver a message." "What message?" "That Marcus Webb is no longer alone." The attack came with devastating precision. Caught between two forces, the cattlemen's hired guns found themselves outmaneuvered. The firefight lasted less than 10 minutes. 6 raiders lay wounded, while the rest fled. Chief Mahpiya approached one of the wounded. "Tell your employers that this land now belongs to the Crow Nation and Marcus Webb jointly. Any further trespassing will be considered an act of war." As they prepared to leave, Marcus took one last look at the ruins of his old life. Everything he'd built over 2 years was destroyed. But somehow, he felt more hopeful than he had in months. As they rode back toward the valley, Marcus realized that Chief Mahpiya's decision to accept him as family had already begun changing his fate. He was no longer the poor homesteader fighting alone. He was part of something larger, something worth fighting for. The setting sun painted the valley in golden light, illuminating a future that stretched ahead with purpose and the unshakable knowledge that he would never again face the world alone. If you enjoyed this story, Click the next video to watch another powerful Western tale. Don't forget to subscribe. Your support means everything.